18-07. And we're going to have somebody present that. Okay. Turn your mic on.
I will do all of that.
Okay. Should be coming back. I don't know where Ben got to. Maybe we'll just give him a few minutes.
Good afternoon, Reeve Council. What I'm doing today is I'm presenting the new proposed fire services bylaw. And I'm really much at your disposal if you want to ask questions, make comments as we work our way through the presentation. That's fine with me. Or alternatively, if you want to wait till the end, that's also whatever works best. So I think in your agenda package, you've got a copy of the proposed fire service bylaw. So one thing to be mindful of, when we said that this new bylaw repeals and replaces bylaw 2010-03, 2014-31, 2017-44, we haven't lost the provisions of those bylaws. They've simply been, well, some of the provisions have been changed. We're going to talk about that. But this, the proposed new bylaw is really built on the bones of bylaw, the original fire services bylaw 2014-31. So things like your fire guardians, fire protection charges, fire bans, all those kind of provisions are pretty much intact. We didn't go out there to try and fix what wasn't broken, but we also tried to pull everything into one bylaw instead of having various bylaws dealing with fire protection services. One of the benefits of doing that in one bylaw is there's consistency. We don't end up with a bunch of inconsistent terms that kind of mean sort of the same thing, but not quite. And it's a little bit easier to administer. So what's the drive between this new bylaw? Well, as Council has heard over the last several months, life is changing in the municipal world when it comes to provision of fire services. As a rural municipality, Wheatland County is obligated to provide fire protection services under the, I always get it mixed up, the Forest and Prairie Fire Protection Act. But there's also changes, as has been presented to Council, with respect to OH&S requirements and WCB. But beyond the legislative changes, I think the fact remains that nobody at Wheatland County wants to see a firefighter hurt or worse. And I believe there is an overwhelming sense of responsibility to be providing the best fire protection services across Wheatland County as you can. And so you don't need legislation to tell you that's what you want to do. That is the direction from Council. And so that is what this new bylaw is geared towards doing, is to provide the rules of the road to how to get to that direction. One of the things that it also intends to achieve is to address fire protection services holistically across the county. Today, life has changed a bit in Wheatland County because over the past few years, you've got your own fire department, and your own fire department is providing fire protection services as well as the fire protection associations. So you're a bit of a unique animal right now in the province. There aren't that many municipalities with fire protection associations providing services, fire protection services anymore. But it is definitely a workable model. And as discussed previously, when we looked at reworking this bylaw, we didn't reinvent the wheel. We really I looked at what happened in Vulcan County because I was involved in that. And they're a few years ahead of Wheatland in its evolution. So it's been interesting to see, because one thing when I'm a lawyer in my office in downtown Calgary, writing these provisions is much different when the provisions are in play. And it's been interesting to get feedback from the other municipality with respect to how has this actually worked in practice, and the feedback's been fairly positive. So that's where the model comes from. And the other thing, and I think we're seeing this in the Calgary region, especially following the 2013 floods, is the region was really faced with the reality that borders become a little gray when disaster and emergencies hit. Everyone has to come together, and there's been a move in the region to come together into a more of an integrated service. And of course, that also needs to happen within municipalities' own boundaries. So even though Wheatland County has fire districts, and they're jurisdictional, and the fire protection associations are assigned to as a primary fire protection service provider within that district, these boundaries are also gray because you can no longer be operating in a silo effect within Wheatland County or within these fire districts. Wheatland County is moving towards looking at this holistically and making sure there's some consistency in the basic level of fire service that's provided across the county, and as well as the training of the members, so that when you have to come together, it's much easier to integrate these different fire departments. And the other thing that the new bylaw recognizes is that there is a joint provision of fire protection service between the county's own fire departments and the Fire Protection Association. So you see that reference now in this proposed bylaw. So what are some of the primary changes? When I was looking at and working with the regional fire chief in drafting this, one of the things was we needed to clarify what the role and authority is of some of the key positions within the municipality. So section 4 of the bylaw, we would all like to turn to section 4 of the bylaw. It starts at page 7 at the bottom. So this is where we set out the roles and authority of the regional fire chief, the regional deputy fire chief, the district chiefs. And section 5 is where we deal with the role and authority of the fire protection associations. And the other big one is level of service, which we're also going to talk about because I think this is the first time that the county has tried to wrestle with that notion and try to put some parameters around level of service. One thing, and I'm going to highlight it now, is the fire association chiefs have the same authority and responsibilities as the district fire chief. So there's some crossover, and we're going to talk about that, but that's set out in section 5. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about section 4. Let's start at the beginning with the regional fire chief authority, duties, and responsibilities. So first, the change is that we're recognizing that council is sitting in as the policy maker of Wheatland County, and you should not be getting into the operational functions of the county. So instead of having council appoint the regional fire chief, the county manager appoints the regional fire chief. But where county council gets involved is setting this bylaw and also setting the standard operating, approving and adopting the standard operating procedures and guidelines and other policies, which is going to further define the role and responsibilities and qualifications of the regional fire chief. So section 4.3 of the bylaw is clear that the regional fire chief has authority over the management and direction of the fire services department. So it's the regional fire chief that really heads up the department. It's also important, again, to recognize that the regional fire chief also does not operate within a silo. The regional fire chief is part of an overall team. He or she may, I feel like I'm at a disco dance party. He or she may have ultimate authority, but it's not that of a dictatorship. They're to consult with and work in coordination with the district fire chiefs and the fire association district chiefs for the purpose of providing an efficient and effective delivery of fire protection services in the county. And we felt that it was important to set that out in section 4.4 of the bylaw, just to remind everybody that this is a piece of an integrated puzzle. And so the regional fire chief is a part of that puzzle, but so are these other district fire chiefs and fire association district chiefs. So the regional fire chief is responsible to establish policies and procedures for the organization and administration of the fire services department. So that's the county's own fire department. That's section 4.5. Section 4.6 is an entire shopping list of specific responsibilities that are assigned to the regional fire chief. And it is really as a coordinator, a facilitator, a supervisor of making sure that the programs and policies of the county pertaining to fire protection services are implemented, they're current, and they're working. Obviously, the regional fire chief is also going to be involved with dealing with your budget, your capital and operating budgets. And we'll see also in section 5, which deals with the fire protection associations, the regional fire chief is also going to be involved in coordinating and consulting with the fire protection association chiefs with respect to capital asset funding requests. Because as we've discussed, it's time for Wheatland County to understand what's out there. What kind of equipment is out there? Who needs what? Who's using what in order to facilitate the level of service? Because one of the other drivers behind all of this is the change in the development landscape in Wheatland County. You're getting more intensive residential development. You are getting seniors housing. You are getting more commercial and industrial development, all of which comes with different demands on your fire protection services, whether it's being delivered by Wheatland County's fire department or by the fire protection associations. And with that comes training obligations and equipment obligations, so that these firefighters, whether they're Wheatland County firefighters or the Fire Protection Association firefighters, they have what they need to be safe and efficient in delivering the service. And so this is where the buck kind of lands in the lap of the regional fire chief to coordinate all of that and to make sure that Wheatland County resources are being allocated appropriately, and to make those recommendations to council, who obviously will have the final say in how those resources are allocated. Now, section 4.9 of the bylaw also provides that, and again, in accordance with the policies, which is the standard operating procedures and other applicable policies, the regional fire chief can assume command of an incident to ensure the safety of public emergency services personnel and mitigation of property damage and environmental impact. I mean, that is probably going to be in a fairly extreme situation, but it's important that the regional fire chief does have that ultimate authority if necessary. We also thought it was important to set out some specific provisions dealing with the regional deputy fire chief. Oh, and excuse my typo. Look at that. I usually spell much better. Anyway, Not only does a regional deputy fire chief step into the shoes of the regional fire chief and take over her authority and responsibilities in her absence or at her direction, there's also some specific responsibilities that have been already delegated to the regional deputy fire chief, and that's in section 4.14. And really, I think one of the major ones is in 4.14A, which is developing, coordinating, and monitoring member training programs and training program records in all fire departments. And that's going to include both county-run fire departments as well as the Fire Protection Association departments. And this, again, is to ensure that there is consistency in member training and to ensure that every member who's out there, every volunteer firefighter who's out there who's responding to calls has the necessary level of training to allow him or her to be safe and efficient in delivering of the service. So the district chief's authority, duties, and responsibilities starts out in section 4.16. One of the things that's clear is that they are responsible to and take direction from both the regional fire chief and the regional deputy fire chief. And again, this is going to be applicable not only to Wheatland County's district chiefs, but also to the Fire Protection Association chiefs. They are also going to be accountable to and report to the regional fire chief and the regional deputy fire chief. They also have specific responsibilities, a shopping list of those responsibilities set out in section 4.18 of the bylaw. And much of this, I'm sure to the district chief's delight, deals with record management because you live and die by your records when it comes to incidents with OH&S and WCB, and also just for your own liability management. Because one of the things that, even though Wheatland County can contract out the provision of fire protection services to, again, the fire protection associations, you can't contract out of your liability. At the end of the day, Wheatland County is responsible for the type of fire protection services provided in the county, no matter who's providing it. And so these records help establish that policies were being adhered to and met, the bylaw was being adhered to and met, etc. So in the case of an incident or in case of a lawsuit, there is a defense, and that defense is not just available for Wheatland County, but also for the firefighters, and when we talk about Section 5, the fire protection associations. The district chiefs will also be responsible for appointing members to their own fire departments. So they have control over who's on their team. So of course, the big one is the fire protection associations, and this is in Section 5. So Section 5.1 starts out by providing the authority for the fire protection associations to provide fire protection services within the county, and it's delineated by the fire districts. The bylaw also provides that the provisions of the bylaw, the level of service, and the policy of the county are binding on these fire protection associations when providing fire protection services within the county. Now, I understand and appreciate that the fire protection associations also provide fire services in some case within the boundaries of villages, and that's the village's own business. But this is really applicable to when they're out providing these services within Wheatland County. And again, it's to ensure consistency. No matter if it's a Wheatland County Fire Department or a Fire Protection Association department providing fire protection services within the boundaries of Wheatland County, there is a consistent level of service and training that's going to be adhered to. So some of the other points, your fire protection associations have to maintain an active status under the Societies Act. They have to be a party to a valid and existing fire service agreement. And one of the reasons for that is because under the Municipal Government Act, Section 535.2, this is where there's statutory protection from liability for fire service organizations, which include a fire protection association, because they are an entity other than a municipal authority or regional services commission that provides fire services to a municipality in accordance with, and this is important, in accordance with an agreement with or at the request of the municipal authority. And so that's why it's important that there is a valid and existing fire service agreement in place to ensure that we don't have a debate over whether or not in an incident, a lawsuit, a fire protection association has the protection of section 535.2. Not only would we have to establish that they're providing service at the request of Wheatland County and pursuant to a valid agreement, but they're operating within the terms of that agreement. They haven't stepped outside in order to have that statutory protection. Under section 5.6, we've made it quite clear that all district fire departments are subject to the direction and authority of the regional fire chief and regional deputy fire chief with respect to ensuring compliance with the bylaw. And as I noted earlier, district fire association chiefs have the same authority and responsibility as the district fire chiefs. That's specified in section 5.7. Just to, and again, to ensure that there's some consistency between the different fire districts, section 5.9 sets out who's being called in priority when it comes to assistance calls. And again, that's to achieve consistency. And then a big change really is this budget and expenditure rules, and that's in sections 510 to 521. And we're going to go through some of them just to highlight some of the changes for council's consideration. And really what's driving those changes? And it really is, again, a recognition that the buck really stops with Wheatland County Council, literally. These are all taxpayer dollars that are being utilized and allocated to fire protection services, and it's a question of how much accountability does Wheatland County Council want to have vis-a-vis the fire protection associations with respect to the funding monies that Wheatland County gives to the different fire protection associations. And to be clear, it operates on a go-forward basis. No one's trying to look back in time and undo what was done in the past, and that includes capital assets that have already been purchased, that have already been provided with funding from Wheatland County. So this is on a go-forward basis after the bylaw is passed and in effect. So one of the things, and again, is about achieving consistency and a level playing field for everybody on a go-forward basis, is operating capital budgets will be submitted by October 1st for subsequent years. As noted previously, capital purchases are to be coordinated with the regional fire chief under section 513. And again, this is to ensure that the resources, including financial, but also equipment, within Wheatland County are being allocated fairly and being allocated in a manner that's efficient, and the money and the certain equipment is going to the places that need it. And so it's the regional fire chief is going to have, I think, the best overall global understanding of the proverbial who's who in the zoo. Who's doing what? What are the nature of the calls in the different districts? What do they need? What do they have? Where do we need to bolster some of this equipment? And make recommendations to council, because at the end of the day, it's council's decision. Now, this is a change, is that from the date the bylaw takes effect, capital assets funded in whole or partly, not party, by the county shall be acquired in the name of the county. That is a change. Under the current fire capital agreement, the capital assets are in the name of the fire protection associations, with Wheatland County basically having a lien registered on those assets. So this is a change, and it's in recognition of where the county is funding. As drafted, it says in whole or in part. That could be changed if you're buying it, you're funding it completely. And obviously, this wouldn't negate the ability of the fire protection associations to do their own fundraising and get capital from other sources and get their own equipment and other capital assets without the involvement of Wheatland County. And as I previously stated, this does not impact the capital assets previously acquired in accordance with the existing fire capital agreements. Those deals will stay intact. this is another change, and again, and it goes to accountability, and it's not meant to be a slam or any sort of a negative implication against the fire protection associations. This is really about Wheatland County Council in particular taking a more active role in ensuring that it has a full understanding of where this money is going, because it's a big number every year that goes to fire protection services, and it's important that I think the county has a grasp of how that money is being utilized. So there's going to be an approved budget for operating and capital, and any funding amounts coming from the county have to be utilized in accordance with that approved budget. If monies aren't utilized in the calendar year for which the funding amount was approved, it either gets repaid to the county or rolled forward as operating income into the next calendar year. There's also flexibility. So if a fire protection association wants to utilize some funds for something different than what it was originally approved for, it has the ability to come to council and make that request. Obviously, you have to maintain flexibility in these situations. There is financial reporting requirements in section 518 to 521. So the fire protection services agreements, and we're going to be talking, and that's in section 6, and that's at page 15. And that's really another next step, is updating fire protection services agreement. So this bylaw under section 6.2 really sets out mandatory provisions in these fire protection services agreement. And like I said, the next step would be to be updating the fire protection services agreements and make sure that the shopping list in 6.2 is being covered off and the services agreements are consistent with the bylaw. And of course, subject to any amendments that council may make after today. Then, like I said before, we really haven't changed much when it comes to these other provisions with respect to things like fire guardians, fire bans, control of fire hazards, etc. I think we did some tweaking with respect to enforcement provisions. We added in a section with respect to warning letters and remedial orders, because one of the things that I'm doing as I look at different bylaws for Wheatland County is I'm trying to get your enforcement provisions consistent across the board on these bylaws, because I just think that makes life easier for everybody. Makes life easier for the county when it comes time to enforce the bylaw, and it also provides kind of a consistent set of rules for the ratepayers and residents within the county. Yeah. But I don't think there's much of any controversy. The next point that I think is important, and this is a big change really, it's Schedule D, and that's the level of service. And so why is Schedule D so important? Well, it's important because, as I said before, County Council is the policy maker. And one of the big policies when it comes to fire protection services is level of service. What can we as Wheatland County provide? What are our available resources when it comes to money, when it comes to manpower, when it comes to equipment? What are our challenges as a fairly large rural municipality where we have got varying levels of development, when we've got varying distances from fire halls, we're working with a purely volunteer fire department model. There's a lot of contingencies implicitly built into providing fire protection services in a rural municipality, which is providing fire services through a volunteer model. But that's exactly the question for council. So if there is ever an incident, there's ever a lawsuit, Wheatland County can say, we provided our level of service in accordance with our bylaw, which was set by council. This is a valid policy decision. And when you have got a valid bona fide policy decision, a court is not going to question that. And as long as you operated in accordance with your policy, you are shielded from liability. So that is why it's important to take a look at this level D, level of service. And the other thing that came to mind when we were working on this is I think it's very important for Wheatland County councillors to understand what you're doing out there, what's happening out there, what is the level of service that's being provided out there? Because then that question comes to mind as development proceeds. Do we have to do anything different with respect to budget allocation, et cetera, in some circumstances because of a type of development that's coming where we need to increase our level of service in that district? So the starting point, though, is understand what are you capable of delivering today to your ratepayers. So the basic rule, and this is pretty consistent across the board for most rules, is that it's basic exterior fire suppression only, except where members are trained for interior attack. The somewhat unfortunate, but yet reality of the situation in a rural area is typically by the time the fire department comes, it's too late to do anything with respect to saving anything inside a structure you are trying to prevent the fire from spreading. So that is fairly consistent. So that's the basic exterior fire suppression. And also for interior attack, it requires specialized training that, again, some fire departments may go there. Some fire departments, for example, one of the things that come to mind is if you have got a seniors facility where you've got vulnerable people with mobility issues, that kind of thing, that's a development. I don't think any of your firefighters are going to show up to a fire there and just go, oh, well, I guess we'll try and save, the outbuildings. No, people are going to be wanting to go and save people. And so that's going to require special equipment, and that's going to require special training. The point here is that through this bylaw and through Schedule D, Council is setting a basic level of service that's more or less guaranteed. We're going to talk about that because we have an out clause saying it's never guaranteed because of extenuating circumstances. But any fire department that wants to go over and above, they're able to do that. And we're trying to build in that flexibility, as you'll see when we're working through Schedule D. So Section 1.3, there's no guarantee of a specific response time. In an urban area like Calgary, they set response times because, of course, under the building code, if your response time is more than 10 minutes, there's specific additional things they have to do with a building with respect to exteriors, sprinklers, that kind of thing that isn't applicable under 10 minutes. And so, for example, Calgary is looking at response times, and I think they may have just increased some response times. You can't guarantee a response time in a rural municipality with a volunteer fire hall. If you have a hall that has got some permanent firefighters that are going to be there manning the station, you can, within a certain parameter of that fire hall, but you're not there yet. So we've just simply built in no guarantee of specific response time. And the other important aspect is Section 1.5 is we also provided that service levels may vary in any particular incident due to extenuating circumstances. And there's a whole shopping list of extenuating circumstances. Weather, road conditions, whatever. Things happen. So we're going to do our level best to provide this level of service as we've set out, but we can't guarantee it in any specific response. So let's understand there's three basic levels of service. There's the awareness level. Firefighters will recognize risks and hazards, secure the area, and call for trained assistance. So that's where the call is requiring a higher level of training, certification, different types of equipment than what they have available. So they can only do so much, but they're going to call and get the help they need. Operations level. Firefighters will take defensive action to contain and control the incident and seek assistance from outside agencies equipped to mitigate the incident. And then the technician level, firefighters will initiate offensive action to bring the incident under control and to an end. So you're going to see those terms referenced in Schedule D. So that's the response levels. Then the next part that we deal with is the actual levels of service. What does this mean? The first one is basic exterior response. So a defensive attack, structural, that's at technician level. Everyone's trained, everyone can show up and get that situation under control and bring it to an end. Offensive attack, structural. The provision here is that Interior structural firefighting will only be performed where there is sufficient manpower, training, equipment, and water supply to safely carry out such duties as ventilation, search and rescue, fire attack, and salvage and overhaul. Fire department shall operate at the response level that the firefighters are trained and certified for. So again, this is something where we've provided a variable because there's a recognition that there is already a bit of a variance between the different fire departments on what they're able to do on an offensive attack. A non-structural fire, fire departments are going to operate at a technical level, which means they can bring it under control, bring it to an end. At a non-structural fire, including but not limited to industrial fires, vehicle fires, outbuildings, and other non-structural fires, unless there are special circumstances which exceed the fire department's training and certification, in which case the fire department shall operate at the response level that the firefighters are trained and certified for. And we went back and forth a little bit on this one, because I can think of situations in some other municipalities where we've got some pretty interesting industrial development, where they may have sulfur or they may have explosives, things that actually require some specialized training in order to be able to deal with. So we wanted to have that kind of flexibility on non-structural fires. Grassland wildfire, technician level, I mean, that's the big one. Medical first response, that's being operated at awareness level. It's limited to basic life support at standard first aid or emergency medical responder level. There will be no patient transport. That is all provided through the province with respect to their paramedics and ambulances. Motor vehicle response, and we have in Sub D, it includes scene stabilization, vehicle stabilization, extraction of patients, patient care, traffic management, landing stars, air ambulance, fire suppression. That's all at the technician level. Rescue response can be a variety of different things. For motor vehicle collisions, that will be dealt with at a technician level. All others are at an awareness level or operations level. It will depend on the level of the fire department's training and certification. So water rescue, enclosed spaces, those kind of things require special kind of training, certification, and equipment. And again, not all fire departments are going to have everything at the same time. So it will be dependent on the specific fire department. And then what we did in section 1.7 is the county will use reasonable efforts to provide the following levels of service to the fire districts. And then we set out each of the fire districts and what they can expect from a level of service. Again, that's all subject to 1.5, which means nothing's guaranteed on any specific call because of specific circumstances. But this is the general base level that the county is using all reasonable efforts to achieve when it comes to provision of fire service. So what's next? This bylaw is the first step. I mean, this is really where council gets to grapple with some of these changes, make a decision formally if this is the direction you want to go, because that then lays the groundwork to take next steps. So as I said before, one of the first next steps would be to update those fire protection service agreements, bring them in line with the bylaw. Have to talk about how council wants to deal with funding for capital assets on a go-forward basis. Do we need to have a different fire capital agreement on a go-forward basis? And then this fire capital fund committee. I love this phrase. I see the phrase many places. I don't know what they are. I haven't found a bylaw. I haven't found terms of reference or anything. So that's also something we have to talk about is this committee, I think, sounds like a great idea. It's just, it has to be formalized. And part of that too will potentially involve what is the village's roles here? Where do the villages come to the table and how do they participate? And there's different models out there that Wheatland County can take a look at. But again, that's another step that needs to be taken as Wheatland County evolves down this road with respect to fire protection service. And that's all I have from a presentation perspective, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, has council got any questions? Jason?
Judy, could you elaborate on the minimum amount of training that the firefighters would need?
No. Initially, we started with the Fire Service Master Agreement, as you all know, and it was one of the things that was the longest and most difficult for us to come to consensus to. And initially, we have agreed that we would have 4 specific courses, S3, 4, 6, and 1100 if the department provided rescue. I believe that still exists unless council directs differently. We are in a flux right now, and the chiefs are well familiar with this. We've discussed it a number of times. The province no longer certifies those courses that I just listed off. We can still take them. So with having Chief DeBoja report to me, he was able to make some inroads. And so the NFPA standards for a basic firefighter is NFPA 1001 level 2. Currently, there's a lot of training happening in our municipality. The associations have been very good about that. And we think we found a solution to the fact that we can't certify the simple courses that we've been taking, and that we can push forward. But it's up to council to decide what kind of service provision we like. I would be very comfortable. The province is recognizing 1001 level 1 and 1001 level 2. When you've completed that, you're considered a professional firefighter in the province of Alberta. It is very difficult for us to look at training-wise because it seems the perception is that it's unattainable, and I think we figured out a way to do it and still get our crews where they need to be. So that service training level minimally is 3, 4, 6, and 1100 is what we'd all agreed to as a group.
Any other questions?
To Jason's comment, then, we recognize 3, 4, 6, and 11. The province has changed their mandate. Are they going to recognize them? The way you've got it set up, or what you're looking at doing?
Through the chair. MAC is working on something right now. We can still teach those courses currently. So we can teach the 3, 4, 6, and 11. We can teach all of the S courses. There's no certification given. So there's no recognition for the amount of work that they've put in to take the courses. And typically those certifications, when you had acquired them all, you could present and challenge the provincial and get recognition for your 1001s. MAC has since discovered that we can get everybody the courses, and then as a group we can challenge the exam. So what we're wanting to do, and we haven't had this, and I don't want to steal Mac's thunder, he'd like to meet with the fire chiefs and the training officers and go through the information that he's discovered from the province, which will allow us to address the different needs. And by looking at all of the training throughout the whole municipality, we asked all of the fire departments to give us their training levels so we could identify where the gaps are, and then do a service provision for those gaps. So we may identify we need to do a 500 course, so we may need to do a hazardous course, or whatever that is. MAC will lead that group through, and then we'll be able to challenge and receive certification from the IFSAC and Pro Board seals, so that will never be taken from them again, so they never have to do this again.
Any other questions? I know we've got some members from the various fire associations and fire departments here, and I'm sure you all have some comments. Council will listen to your comments. Please make them constructive. In the future, what I foresee to happen, make your comments, staff will write them down, council will decide on what the amended bylaw will look like, and we'll bring it back for another reading, and be another situation much like the same if it goes that far, and be more time for more comments depending on the nature of the comments today. So when you want to make a comment, I will please ask you to come up, stand at the podium, make sure the mic's on, and state your name and your association or fire department you're associated with. So no particular order, comments, as simple as that. Go ahead. And if you could reference, if you want to be specific, reference the number on the new bylaw, so we can, I like to keep little notes on, makes it easier for me.
Craig Nelson with the Rosebud Fire Association and Rosebud Fire Department and Dallam Fire Department. I'd like to thank Reeve, Castor, and Council for the opportunity to speak to the Fire Services Bylaw 2018-17 before us now. I'm speaking on behalf of the volunteer fire departments and rural fire associations in Dallam, Rockyford, Rosebud, and Standard. I would ask all those present, please stand for recognition of that. Thanks, guys. We very strongly feel there are numerous issues and errors and items needing discussion with the council before this bylaw moves forward. Fire and Protection Services in this county has been a partnership in the past with the volunteers, RFAs, county and villages, and all partners need to be on board to make this bylaw a success. I would like to briefly hit the highlights of some of our serious concerns and respectfully request a meeting with the county council, RFAs and firefighters to discuss this bylaw and get some communication back in the partnership. First of all, we have been told that the upcoming June 1st changes to the OHS Act necessitated this new bylaw, but we cannot see anything in the new act to make it a catalyst to this new bylaw. So we would ask that you present those to us so we can actually see it ourselves. There are numerous very confusing terms used throughout and some are not in the definitions, and this makes it very difficult to understand what and who is being referred to. Such terms as the county fire department, district fire chief, district fire departments, regional fire chief, the regional fire chief, fire services department, Wheatland County Fire Services Department, and Volunteer Fire Protection Service. In section 3 and elsewhere, it talks about no service in other areas without mutual aid agreements. Many of these are not in place as far as we know, and in fact, we have been told that the mutual aid agreement we all signed in February of 2007 is no longer valid. We're concerned and would like to know where we stand. Section 4 has many confusing parts. Part of this section are overbearing, redundant, and put the regional fire chief and regional deputy fire chief in total control over all fire scenes, fire chiefs, and fire departments, and this will not work. Section 5, fire protection associations in the past have been treated as a contractor providing service for a fee, with the surplus at the end of the year being moved to restricted reserve fund. All books are audited. Now it appears we're being treated as a department needing budgets and having to call for approval if we need more gas instead of tires. Micromanagement seems to be a big issue here. The county will now dictate total say, and we must have ask ourselves why we are even here. Instead of a view to control costs and save for the future, now we will certainly need to budget high and spend all the money. What happens if the brakes go out that are not on the budget? Do we park the truck until we get approval from the council? It seems like the county is headed in the same direction as the county of Rockyview, where 90% of the bylaw appears to have come from, and which now has protection costs of around $14 million. This section is very dictatorial. Section 6, we have issues and must ask ourselves, where is the partnership? We seriously need to get some communication involved with this bylaw. Our service is moving forward in the fire service agreement between the Wheatland County Fire Associations and villages, which we wasted some 18 nights of our lives over the past 2 years, as otherwise we will be losing many dedicated and trained volunteers that are at this moment asking ourselves, why am I even putting ourselves through all this grief? We request council strike a committee before third reading. We, the RFAs, plead to have full input and dialogue on this bylaw to show true partnership and respect for each other. Thank you for hearing us today.
Thank you. Any other comments? Are you prepared to answer any of them, Joanne, especially the one about the changes in the acts?
I'm not, I appreciate the comments and I've taken my notes on the comments, but with respect to specifics, I can't get into specifics today. I can say that the changes to the OH&S Act, I mean, that really goes to ensuring consistency with respect to membership training and the record management component of the bylaw that's coming in. Judy may have some other comments on that.
Just a quick reminder to council that we wear the risk and liability for the workers, and that's what the Act says. We've never looked at it that way before. I know some of our associations are vastly aware of workers, so we must direct the work of workers. We must be accountable for the work of workers. We must provide them what they need to work in our municipality, and that's what it's specific to. Bill C-30 is not new, but it is bringing drastic changes, and as we've been pointed out to us, the WCB Act and OH&S Act are being modified 4 times this year to reflect the changes that are coming through on June 1st with Bill C-30. So it's really about maintaining and directing work and supplying workers with what they need in order to be able to do the job in our municipality.
Okay. Council have any questions?
I will just reiterate what I have said in the past, that I do believe that we should have met with the fire associations prior to the bylaw reading. I've said that to multiple councillors, and I don't think everybody here has sat down with the fire association. I believe Ben, Glenn, and myself have. I don't know if anybody else has. So I don't know how we are expected to make a well-educated decision on the basis of the information we have been shown with when we have people here that, you know, sorry, I'm not good at putting all my thoughts into words, but that's what Amber's here for, and she's not here, and it's driving me up the wall. But yeah, she's my spokesperson normally. No matter if we can change some things or no things in this bylaw because of provincial regulations, they still deserve us to listen to them. And I don't think we've given, as a new council, we have not given that option to them. They are ratepayers as well as firefighters. It is our job. We have obligations to our ratepayers as well as the firefighters. And I don't think we have done our due diligence in that aspect of being council.
Any other comments? I know you had asked for a meeting with council and the fire associations. That's what this is today. It's a meeting with council. It's in public. It's recorded. And you can all view it at your leisure, same as all our ratepayers. This is just the first step. We've heard your comments. We'll have to sit down and think about them, and we'll come back again. But this is full engagement right now, right here, and into the future. So there are some issues here, and I guess if there's no more further comments, we'll have to grapple with them as a council and see what we can get over. And we'll come up with something else, or if it's the same thing, I don't know. I can't speak for that. But in a moving forward process, that's the way we do it. We're public and we're transparent. Go ahead, please.
Craig Nelson with the Rosebud Fire Association again. basically, if we don't do a further committee, we're just trying not to waste 4 hours today by going piece by piece through it to make everything known that's these changes. If you want to work on it today, we're more than happy to do it today. We're just trying to actually set a time to do it, and that's what we're asking for.
Okay, so how much time do you think you would like?
Well, we've spent 4 hours the other night and 3 hours the night before going through it personally, so I mean, we've got a lot of time invested in this. If you guys want to hear it all, we're more than happy to share.
That's the idea of it. So council want to have a different day to meet on this? Being that it could take 3 hours or so? Or if you have all your comments written down, we could go through them and do it that way too. Are they all written down, Joanne?
My suggestion would be if they could provide their comments in writing with relevant sections, or if they've got other, I saw a fire committee policy that Craig had that I've never seen. That would be useful to have if council decides, yes, we're going to move towards another meeting to discuss the comments. I think it'd be very helpful to have their comments in writing beforehand, so we have a chance to look at that, think about some options, and put that in writing as well, so that we can come together and kind of have a crystallized, focused discussion on these points.
That was the idea of this meeting. We had the bylaw out on the airwaves, so to say, last week, so everybody could read it. I was hoping. Darcy, you have
Hi.
a name and
Thanks,
association,
Glenn.
please.
Yeah, Darcy Burke, Rockyford Fire Department. I'm also a member of Rockyford Rural Fire Association. I'm just thinking, you know, I hope that Wheatland County Council is open to some negotiation through this process. I started here along with some other people back when we did the Firewise, I was going to say investigation, but the report that comes through Firewise. And, you know, we've implemented some of them changes that came through that consultant's report. Judy knows that. And I do believe that was a valid piece of information. We spent quite a bit of taxpayer money on that report, and it's not that old. I think that report, the actions that were taken in there, the recommendations that are made, we should continue with that process. We had an ad hoc committee put together. I have a letter in my file here appointing some of us to that committee from Wheatland County Council. I think if we're going to work through this process, maybe council should sit with that committee. I know the committee knows that report inside out. We've had these 19 or 20 meetings or 3 years of our lives, which way you want to look at it, that we've invested into drafting the new fire service agreement. And you know, in all honesty, that communication in that piece was excellent. Council appointed a couple of representatives that sat with us, and we got along real well. There were some times we didn't get along too good, but at the end of the day, we got along real well. And we ended up with a document that every party sitting there agreed to. It was not a waste of time at all. And I understand, and I hope we see the backup of the ONH changes that are being required to precipitate this document we're looking at today. But if those changes exist, why could they not be in the document that so much of it we already agree to as partners, instead of developing something that's brand new? Because we were this close. And there's a party, and everybody was represented at the table, and everybody agreed to it. And if there was something we needed to tweak to it, well, then let's look at that. But we just took that wheel and let's reinvent it. I disagree with the comment that we did not do that. We are doing that because we were that close in the other document. So if council is willing, I think you really should do your homework. Take a look at that proposal that we put together. It's lengthy, it's in depth, it's worth your time to do it because we put the time in. And then let's sit with that committee and Judy and Mac and let's go through it. I honestly believe if you want to have a true partnership, and you know, I think when you take a look at it, communication, the key to good communication brings about awareness and respect. And today, I think we've faltered there. We don't have good communication right now. And so we have some folks that are not really aware of what was transpiring, and we've got some folks losing some respect. And we should not have that as partners, and we should not have that in our fire service at all. Our fire service is about watching each other's back, and that's what it should be about. And I think with some good communication, we can work our way through this process, as long as all parties are willing to communicate. And I would suggest we do it through that Fire Service Review Committee with you folks. That's all I got to say.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Would it be possible to provide a list of your comments? So when we get together again, we have time to research them and talk about them and provide answers if we have answers moving forward. And we'll take your comments into consideration for sure and try and come up with something. I thought I heard, maybe I didn't, that after we get the bylaw done, our next step was to get a fire service agreement done. And I think that's what Darcy was talking about, was the fire service agreement. I'd never heard it anywhere that we threw that out or not looking at it on advice that Wheatland County's fire service bylaw is lacking desperately. And we have to get that up to code, I guess, without a different word, up to snuff, we have some work to do as a county first. We have to set our levels. I don't think anything was thrown in the trash or going forward. This is something that Wheatland County has to do. I don't know, you might think we're picking on you, but as an analogy, since I've been sitting here, we've always had our own construction crew and we've built roads. That's all we've done. So are we effective and all that, the long story. So last few years we've contracted out different people. We start with a tender. This guy won. Their OH&S, their workman's compensation papers are gone through with a fine-tooth comb by us, and if we're not capable, we have somebody contracted that will do it. Our inspectors, whether they're ours or if we don't have the manpower, we hire engineers from engineering firms we work with, and they're on site almost on a daily basis to make sure the machinery's up to par, make sure the workers are up to par, they participate in safe, go through it, the whole thing. This isn't a heck of a lot different than what this bylaw is saying. So bear with us, we have to do this. We'll take your comments into shore or arrange them. And before we pass this thing, we'll have another opportunity to make comment again. And specific to this fire service agreements and specifically to anything else that was, we'll work some on the definitions, I guess, and the mutual aid, I've never heard that's been squashed in any way. That they're still there, the same as they always were. Nothing has changed, nothing. The old bylaw is still in effect. All agreements are still in effect until we come up with new ones. So don't let, I don't know, fear of the unknown rule the day, okay? I know it's stressful for you, it's stressful for us too. I sit both sides. So if there's no more, I'm going to ask council, you know, we don't have first reading on this, so before we proceed on this bylaw, I think we should have first reading done. Then I I would ask that we just leave it go at that, and we'll, staff will work on this and council, and we'll work on the comments. So it'd be very helpful if we get your comments in writing. And they don't have to come today, they can come end of the week, or if you're not gonna send them, let us know so we're not waiting for them. Is that fair enough? Council, what you wanna do? Any other comments?
Yeah,
Please use the podium, please.
Brett Gates, Standard Rural Fire. So,
You want to say it again? So that when you're standing in front of the mic, then that camera zooms in and
there
catches
you
a nice
go.
mug
Brett
shot.
Gates, Standard Rural Fire President. So you're saying you're gonna let us know if you'll meet with us and talk about it?
It'd be the same setting, I'm sure, the way it is now.
We were hoping for a little bit of discussion with a roundtable discussion to, we really, you know, we've got a lot of upset firefighters because they've been left out of this for 5 years. I don't think they've really had any, I don't think you guys really understand what's going on, and I don't realize she does either. For example, in the RFAs, as far as accountability, you know, we provide audited financial statements. We try to look for ways to save money, run a good operation. Any money not spent goes into a restricted reserve. We have most of all these reports. We've heard there's reports, a booklet that was given out. I haven't found any fire chief that has got the booklets for these reports that were supposedly to come back. Most of the departments represented here are doing all those reports now. But we just would like a little discussion and a little, we feel you don't really understand the workings of our departments, and so we would respectfully request just a roundtable meeting. So I'll leave that with you. Let us know if you will or will not do that, and if so, what time, date, and we'll proceed from there. Thank you.
Thanks. And I'm just speaking on myself now. If we were just to have a meeting with council and the fire associations, our main source of information, our expertise is sitting there. There is nothing stopping anyone from in here from saying their piece. And as far as I understand, and I could be wrong here, on the issue of your money and you get the audited statements, and we get them and we approve them and we put them in our book. But the modernized MGA is requiring from municipalities, I believe, 3-year operating budgets, expandable to 5, 5-year capital budgets, expandable to 10 in the near future. That's where some of this thing is with the budget. We have to have it. How we develop our funding formula for the trucks in our service agreement after our bylaw is done, that can still be done. But it has to be recognized where the money's coming from. We both know that when we fund 60% of the truck, the other 40%, the vast sum of it is still county money. We have to come to grips with that and report it as such. I in no way want to take our pride or the drive of volunteers away. But these are some of the realities we're faced with. And I in no way want to turn our volunteers into fundraising machines. I don't think that's why you joined up. So, but there's got to be a way to do it. We're not going, we have, along with the best volunteers in the province, we have good equipment and we're building nice fire halls. Our past performance, I in no way see in the future we want to curtail that in any way. It's something we have to work through. And the county's been lax over the few years in getting it done. I'll go back to the road that's more than what I know of. When we hire a contractor to build a road, we don't say, go build that road over there. We have detailed engineered drawings we give him to build that road. And he's accountable. But more importantly, county council's accountable to our ratepayers that that road is built to the standards we paid for. It's all about accountability and making sure all the paperwork's done. You come up with a better idea. That's why I'm grateful you come today. I'm grateful you made your comments. I'm grateful you spend so much time working on it. We'll work together. Give us the comments. We'll see if we can make them work or not work. And at the end of the day, if we're down to a half a dozen or 10 things that we're having a hard time working out, well, maybe our sleeves get rolled up and we work on it a little harder. But in the meantime, let's get the low-hanging fruit and get that done and see what it comes to. Anybody want to say anything else?
I just want to say we've talked to OH&S and WCB directly. We had a meeting with them. They addressed some key things, and to our understanding, some of that was addressed with the previous fire committee. And what we got out of it, basically a volunteer firefighter is treated as a worker. And we have to be responsible for them as a worker in the county of Wheatland. And that is the key to a lot of things. The responsibility lies within us to make sure that is taken care of.
And I guess there's been some comments made about the county listening to presentations by OH&S and workmen's compensation. By staff, I didn't hear the presentation that was given to the fire associations a couple of years ago. It was virtually the same with some new dates and whatever passed. Virtually the same. It was given to Wheatland County councillors because some of them never had it before. We don't have any more information than what you were privy to in the past. So let's build from that. We'll go to work on the recommendations. We'll put together an amended bylaw, and we'll all read it again, and we can all meet here again and talk about it. Ben?
Through the chair, my understanding with we're replacing our current bylaw with this bylaw so that it follows all provincial and federal mandates, and there's a few changes in there that are a little, some around the funding and when it has to be reported. I think those can all be worked out. And as Glenn said, if we have a copy of that letter. But I think the other problem that this comment about this service agreement is outside of the bylaw. That has nothing to do with the bylaw. And it's something that we can work on through if that's what is needed. And I know our legal has said that one service agreement, master service agreement for all the departments doesn't really work. It needs to be with each individual department. So we're going to have to sit down somehow and work that out. How we do that hasn't been decided yet. But the issue around the bylaw, we need to get that in place. And with saying that, I'm willing to put first reading on the table to get this processing gear. And if you guys can set your comments to paper and send them in to us, we'd appreciate that, and we can move forward from there. So I'll put first reading on the table.
Okay. And just so everyone's perfectly clear, the process is first reading, second reading, third reading. There does not have to be a public hearing. And between first reading and second reading or third reading, the bylaw could be amended at any time. The first reading gets the process started. It empowers our staff to work on it. Being that there's no public hearing, we are free to take comments. The best comments are written down, so they can be given to staff to put it in the bylaw, so there's no mistakes. It's not my interpretation when I hear it, telling somebody else to interpret it. Write them down, please. Brett.
Yes, Brett Gates again, RFA standard. Yeah, so we would definitely be able to write them down. Just let us know what Craig or somebody know what date you need them by, and we'll put that together. When we come here, we don't look like partners, or we look like you're the king.
You're higher up, Brett.
Yeah, but, it was, our firefighters are very, very disappointed in council, frankly, because in here you state priorities, public communication, but you haven't met and talked with us for at least 5 years that we know of. And in here, there's dust control, but in your priorities, it doesn't even mention protective services. And
What have you got there, Brett?
this is your book.
Oh, County
And
Connector.
it just cuts right through the heart of the volunteers, and they are very, very disappointed because, so I would suggest that if you're not willing to meet with us on an informal basis to get the feel of the members and the departments, and you don't have to meet with everybody, we can have a delegation, that's fine. But that's really what needs to happen. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions? We have a motion on the floor.
Can I get a recorded vote, please?
Okay. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Wilson opposed. The rest were in favor. Gerald, I see you got up. Sorry I kind of cut you off, but I had a motion on.
Gerald Gearhart, I'm with the Rocky Ford Rural Association, but this was the first that I've heard someone say that we have the best volunteers in the province,
I did.
and I'm glad that's what we need to hear. Part of it, we need dialogue, this come down and seemed very heavy-handed on all our volunteers. These guys have been working on their own accord for many years, as you know, lots of practicing, lots of training, and us residents in our area, Glenn, we're very happy with the response time and the level of service and all those things. We don't have to be worried that the way things have been running now about response time and level of service and this thing the way it looks now, we're going to make damn sure that you take all this training, and I mean that's the way it comes across, and so I think this dialogue thing is very important.
Well, I can sincerely hope by the time this bylaw is passed, we won't have to hear them words again. That this bylaws give this council an opportunity to get people that are interested to come in and talk. This isn't the first time we've had lots of people in on a bylaw. Sometimes they're in public hearings and they're mandated and we've got different rules. This one here is very specific. And a lot of it could be just a misunderstanding. This bylaw is addressing stuff that Wheatland County has not written down, that we're required to have written down. So at the end of the day, it is very possible that any one of your procedures could be much greater than ours. Ours is a minimum. Everyone has to adhere to them. But any fire department can train more, can have more stringent guidelines. This is a minimum for the county, something we have to have, something we don't have, and we're remiss in not having it. And if something was to happen and we don't have the fine paperwork done, we're liable. Maybe there's no coverage, maybe there is, I don't know. I just don't want to go there. Firefighting is it's a dangerous occupation. It's not like accounting or something like that. You put yourself in harm's way. So if there's no more comments, minimum time to get the comments in, When do you think you could do it by? Next week? I think staff's got some things to work on now, a little bit. Huh? Monday? Pass them on to Judy, I'm guessing. Or to CAO. If you don't have Judy's, email them to the CAO. That address is on the Wheatland County website. And he'll get it to the right person. Sure can, please.
So there will be
It's a pain being open to the public, Darcy.
been there once or twice. I just want to, so we are going to have another face-to-face verbal meeting question and answer session with council?
Just like we did,
Okay.
okay?
So-
So the hope of it is, we'll get the low-hanging fruit done, and maybe it all ends up that way. But if there's a couple issues that need more discussion, that will come too.
Okay. Because okay, that's fine, but we're going to have to set apart a few hours for your folks' time, okay? When we set up this next meeting and go down that road, that is not going to be resolved in 1 hour. When I take a look at this document, and the other night when we sat down, and the highlighter, I've got more highlighter on this document than it's in black and white,
Put the comments down.
okay? They will.
Okay? Maybe the next time you see the document, half of the marks are gone. I don't know.
That'd be a start, for sure.
Okay.
Okay, I just want to ensure that I know for myself, it's face-to-face question and answer.
Okay? And if you're worried about time, the next time the document goes out, and if you think you need 4 hours, if you can fill that much time up, let somebody here know, and we can try and get the agenda set up accordingly.
Fair enough.
And maybe the next time we send the document out 2 weeks ahead of the meeting day to give you time to.
Good. Yeah, that'd
Okay.
be great.
Okay? I think we can accommodate a lot of these.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. With that, I guess we can move on to something else. Thanks for coming in. And I got one in-camera issue. Or does council want to have anything to? Okay, move in camera. All in favor? Carried. All I